All right, everyone. I want to wish you all a very good morning. My name is Eric Caldwell. I'm the president and CEO at the Amerind Foundation, and I'm also the chief curator of the Amerind Museum. And in a few minutes, I'm going to be introducing Duane Maktima, an experienced artist with over 40 years of work in his profession. He's also a member of the Amerind Foundation's board of directors, and we're so honored to have him in our leadership. He's been an artist in residence here at the Amerind for 3 different winters. And he and his wife, Jan, have gotten to know our staff really well. And I'm going to be excited to tell you more about him in just a minute. I did want to alert everybody on the call today about some upcoming programs. 1 week from now, we'll be joined by Violet Duncan. And for those of you who have enjoyed Tony Duncan's performances, Violet is his wife. And Violet, many years ago, decided that she didn't have enough bedtime stories and children's stories to share with her own kids that were about her own people and their own traditions. So she took up a pen and she started writing her own children's books. So next Saturday, she's going to be reading aloud from some of those children's books and taking your questions. So if you have some young people at home, whether they're children or grandchildren, or if they can join you via Zoom, if they're not in your household, I hope you'll think about joining us and listening to Violet's presentation. Then the weekend after that, the weekend of November 21st, Silver Sweet is going to be joining the Amerind again here on our campus. Silver Sweet is a corporation that buys and sells antique Diné, Navajo, and Pueblo jewelry from a variety of different sources, and they always have an excellent show of materials for sale. And then we're into the Thanksgiving season and our holiday season, so we'll tell you more about our December programs at a later date. I do want to encourage you to come and see Duane Maktima's exhibit. Unfortunately, we had put up Duane's exhibit, which is a retrospective on his 40-year career, just before the COVID-19 crisis began. And so unfortunately, we didn't have as much runtime as we would have liked for it. It began in March, and it's closing at the end of this year. If you get a chance to see it, there's over 60 pieces from Duane's long and stunning career as an artist, from his very first pieces to his very latest creations. It includes pieces that are on loan from many generous people in the community who have collected Duane's work, and I want to thank each and every one of them for sharing. It includes his 2-dimensional artworks. He is, in addition to being a master jeweler, an excellent 2-dimensional artist. It includes 3 of his sculptures, 2 which are inside of our facility, and 1 gigantic sculpture that is on the exterior of our facility. I hope you'll get a chance to see that, along with the exhibits of Diné artist Melanie Yazzie, who has a wonderful show of her printmaking. Of course, Melanie is world famous like Duane is, with collections in the National Museum of the American Indian, among other fine art museums. And also the work of Gabriel Ayala, a member of the Pasco-Yaqui tribe. Mr. Ayala started working on ledger art now. Mr. Ayala is most known for being an exceptional classical guitarist with a worldwide reputation. He started creating 2-dimensional artworks, and you'll find a lot of eye-opening, inspiring commentary about Native American people and their intersection with the greater stories of American history. He calls attention to a lot of things that everyone in America should be paying attention to, and I hope that you'll get to see a chance to see that very moving show. So it's my pleasure to introduce Duane to you today. Duane started his career as a professional artist in 1974. He has won literally hundreds of awards at markets and competitions for his incredibly contemporary, unique styles of art. His show is a tour de force of a visionary in the field. He's also mentored generations of younger artists. And it's been our pleasure here at Amerind to become part of Duane and Jan's family. In the years that he's been with us as an artist in residence, they've really folded us into their lives. And we were delighted when he agreed this last year to join our leadership as a member of our board of directors. So without further ado, I will be supporting Duane's technical support here today, but I'm going to turn it over to Duane to lead the rest of the program. If you have any questions today, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little box with Q&A. If you'd like to click on that box and write whatever question you might have, I will be monitoring that box and sharing those questions with Duane so that he can answer them later in the hour. Duane, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And what's in us, I hope, okay, tawa, okay. Tawatre Trash, Sewatamshe, Gay Kiwanama, Roshestuna Huite Kuishi, Etke, Yuhoe, Etke, Kayuti, Kayuni Peti, Shoshestuna, Mine Kadro, Shotich, Kunikuni, High Notin, non Michestuna, Shoshestuna, Wake, Suena, Naya, next year, Etke, Notes, the Utuke Sudra, Taxus, so Hina, Shoshestuna, Tawatestuna, okay. Good morning to everybody. That is what my Harrison language of Laguna Pueblo sounds like. Greeting you with the morning greeting and offering my gratitude for appreciation of this wonderful morning, blessed day. Every day is a blessed day as we start the day off. The Great Spirit has allowed us to survive on this land for millennia. So that's what we always greet people in a group setting. This is the way we formally usually greet people. And I'm gonna thank you, Eric, for the wonderful introduction. It's an honor to be part of the Amerind family, and I know that that we have lots to look forward to. And I hope the screen is good. I think my minimum. Okay, I guess I'm going to start off with singing a song. Being that what my work is about, the title of my exhibition at the Amerind, which is about to end at the end of December, is called "Singing My Song." And so I'm going to start off with a social dance song. And I'm going to sing a song here in the beginning of this opening of this presentation. These are social dance songs, and I want to sing one at the end. And these were composed by my grandmother. She's been gone since she passed on in 1978 at Laguna Pueblo. And she meant a lot to me, and but she was the last of a lady belonging to a religious society at Laguna Pueblo, which has died out. She was the last generation, and I'll go into a little bit about that, about my history, the legacy of my family. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Awe, awe, yo, hene, yo, we, yo, hene, ya. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Awe, awe, yo, hene. Awe, yo, he, yo, hena. Awe, yo, he, yo, hena. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Awe, yo, he, yo, hene, yo. Awe, yo, he, yo, hena. Awe, yo, he, yo, hena. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Awe, yo, he, yo, hene, yo. Wane, yane, 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 ayo, hena. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Yane, 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 ayo, hena. Awe, yo, hene, yo. Greetings, everybody. That is a social dance song, and it's actually a Comanche. They call it Comanche, a dance entry song, and that was composed by my grandmother. Uh, I grew up in northern Arizona, and in regards to my grandparents, Lev Antonio Sayo and my grandmother Louise Sayo on my mother's side, moved to Winslow, Arizona in 1919 as a result of for employment for the Santa Fe Railroad, which recruited 78 young married couples to at the Laguna Feast Day in 1917. They came to Laguna, the Santa Fe Railroad Corporation, as an agreement with the tribal council and offering, I guess, because of their rail line coming through the Pueblo of Laguna lands, that Laguna people would be considered for employment. And it was the beginning of a new era of transportation. So the railroad was moving ahead, and inevitably the towns that the railroad goes through are all historically in Arizona and New Mexico are part of the landscape which we see today. And my grandmother, like I was mentioning earlier, was a part of a religious group that is no longer in existence at Laguna Pueblo. But she was because of that group. Normally, women are not allowed to touch the drums, but if you belong to certain religious clans, um, they have every equal status to be recognized as how would you say, spiritual leaders. So my grandmother used to pick up the drum quite a bit, and she, especially as growing up, I grew up in, like I said, in northern Arizona, Winslow, Holbrook, Arizona, and we would come back home to Laguna Pueblo during holidays, feast days, and it was always something that I was anxious to do with my grandparents, to be with them, to be in the automobile, the car coming. It's a 2-hour drive from Winslow to Laguna Pueblo, 2.5 hours, and all they did was sing the whole way, just amazing. And so that's the kind of growing up that I got to experience. And we get home to Laguna, and there'd always be dancing going on during the holidays. And so my grandparents also participated in that, and I did too when growing up. And so that is a Comanche song, but they also use it as a deer dance entry song when the deer are coming up, from the mountains. We have a beautiful deer dance in the winters. It'll be coming up here shortly. And I guess I chose that song because that's where we're coming into now, winter, late fall. And now back in the day, I remember as a little kid, the grandmothers would always, we didn't have television. And so we would be sitting around the stove in the kitchen in the evenings after supper, and the grandpas would break out their drum, and the other families might come and visit. And that's what we did for entertainment. They would be singing songs, and especially right now, they would be singing, the social dance songs what they might be doing for Christmas, just to reminisce when they make an announcement for the men to go to the kivas to start thinking about what they're going to dance for Christmas holidays. And they celebrate Christmas, believe it or not, at Laguna and most pueblos in New Mexico. They celebrate Christmas from December 24th through January 10th. So it's pretty fun. It's like the holiday is super extended, which is good spirits, and that's what I'm looking forward to. Even though I'm being positive due to the pandemic that we'll be able to, gather, but as well, there could be an obvious isolation again of not gathering. So, but I want to thank Eric for the introduction, and my community that I belong to at the Amerind, which is just so amazingly an accolade now in my cap that I just feel honored to uphold the exhibit that we have going on now at the Amerind. It's just amazing. The retrospective show, of course, it's just a slice of the pie of what I've done in my 47 year career, being an artist starting at 19 years of age at the museum. Actually, I was a college student, and my professor, my first semester of being a jewelry major in the fine arts program at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona, left the program, retired from the university, and went to the museum in Northern Arizona to head up the possibility. It was a pilot program for an art institute along with the sciences of the museum in Northern Arizona. Unfortunately, after its 3-year pilot stint, it wasn't approved by the board, I guess, so to speak. So it dissolved after that point. But it was just a great beginning in my early career. I guess that was when I first started hearing from famous artists who came. We had 2 big events during the year for 3 years, colloquiums for nationally recognized artists, and some were professors from other art schools and colleges, and they came twice a year to have these exhibits, and then talks, discussions, and they would come visit the studio that I was in. I was the youngest. There was 3 of us in this museum in Northern Arizona Art Institute program, and I was the youngest. I was 19 years of age, and the 2 others that were also in this art studio was Victor Beck, a Navajo contemporary jeweler, the first contemporary Navajo jewelry artist of its time. And the other was Robert Lamaudupke, who was Hopi from Shimopovi village and Haute-Villa. And he lived in Flagstaff, made his residence in Flagstaff, but he was a graduate of Northern Arizona University. We all had attended Northern Arizona University. That was our, how would you say, recognition with the director of the Art Institute, Jacob Brookins was his name. And it was a very unique time. The director of the museum at the time was Ned Danson, the actor Ted Danson's father, and he was a great advocate for us. Some of the museum had international recognition already, so we had visitors from all over the world, and I remember one of the most vivid success stories as a young artist that I would say I recall is he brought the vice president of the Swiss bank up to our studio, and it was pretty amazing that day. It's one of those things as an artist that you don't realize that that things like this happen, but that we have on our benches, our work benches. I had probably over 20 pieces works in progress on my bench, and I had sketchbooks where I was always sketching my designs, and the other 2 had the same kind of work on their benches too. And this patron from the Swiss bank, he just looked at everybody in the studio and he says, he's a gentleman. He says, I am just so impressed with what you're doing here in this studio. I would like to buy everything that's on your bench. And we all looked at each other and says, but it wasn't finished work. And he says, I do realize that they're not finished pieces, but I'll be here throughout the day, and just write me up an invoice, each of you. And at the end of the day, I'll stop back by and I'll write you a check for all the work and give you an address where to ship it to in my office in New York City. And oh my goodness, that was for a 19-year-old, we were like in awe. And that was our first positive of I guess of what artist in residence, the capability of the positive reaction that you get from that kind of experience. it just was a metaphor for me to always excel and do the best I could do in my early career. And of course, I'm a very young man at that age, and there was some intimidating comments made, not derogatory, but I remember even professional artists came to the studio through these colloquiums we had twice a year, and they were calling me an artist, and I used to apologize. I used to apologize to them in regards to that. Oh, excuse me, I'm not an artist. I'm just a craftsman, I would say, because I felt that I had no credentials, I had no accolades up to, just starting out, a very young artisan. But they assured me that I was an artist, and that was pretty amazing. But I knew in my back of my, in my heart and my conscience that there was a lot of work I had to do to earn that title of being called an artist. And one of the, how would you say, preliminary things I had to do was to go home to my village of Laguna Pueblo. We follow our mother's clans. My name is Maktima, which is a Hopi name, and that's my grandfather's name. And my mother's side of the family is Parrot clan, and so that's the side that I follow. That's typically of all Puebloan culture villages in Arizona and New Mexico.
Dwayne,
yeah.
would you like me to bring up that picture of your family?
Oh yeah, you can show some of those pictures,
Okay.
and that way our audience can relate to who I'm talking about. Eric's gonna post that here. So and feel free. This is a message to the audience. Like Eric recognized early in the beginning of this program, to write your question, your Q&A. Click on that if you have questions right off the bat, and put your name down so that way I can answer that later as to who recognized. But this is the photo of this upper left picture is my grandmother, the song maker. They both made songs. That's Louise. Her maiden name was Riley, but when she was married to my grandfather, Levantonio Sayo. And to the right of them, that older couple, those are my grandmother's parents, Miguel and Juana Riley. And of course, those are baptismal names given to them. They had Indian names as well. And the lower left is my Hopi side, my grandmother, Amelia Albert. And well, she was a Maktima, but this is in the center, the lower center is my grandfather, Guy Maktima. Maktima actually his Indian name. And he was and that's a picture of me in 1974 at the art studio at the Museum of Northern Arizona. And but talking about my grandfather Maktima, he was, and Levantonio Sayo, all these my grandparents, both sides, they were that first generation taken away from their people and put in schools. And Levantonio and Luis Sayo, they went to St. Catherine's Indian School, and that's where they went to the 8th grade. Both of my mother's parents did, and my Hopi grandparents ended up in Riverside, California, at Sherman Institute for Indian School. The older generation, Miguel and Juana Riley, that picture up there they were the old Orthodox people, and they knew times were changing, and they hated to see it happen. But this was, they weren't negative about it. The only negativity they had about it was seeing their grandchildren, great grandchildren, me, do things that they couldn't comprehend. I was by the time I was in elementary school, of course, my parents were successful. My dad was a college graduate in business, and he served in the Korean War. And both of these grandparents lived in Winslow, Arizona. Because of believe it or not, there was a lot of skepticism about the kids that went to Indian schools around the early 1900s, when they came back home to be amongst their people again, which they were so looking forward to getting through this, being away from home for up until the 8th grade, till they're like 14, 15 years old, and they come home and they weren't accepted because they were so different. So you can see what mainstreaming does to people, and so I'm the result of that in my own early development. And my great grandparents, they were perplexed about it because we used a lot of English, and they spoke nothing but their Harrison native language, my great grandparents. And they could, sometimes I wasn't really fluent in that language. Later on, I moved home, and that's what was my mission. When I talk about fulfilling my destiny, was part of it was going back home and learning and singing. And like my grandfather, Guy, well, both of them were singers and song makers. And so that moving on, I ended up meeting my wife Jan at Laguna Pueblo. She's not from Laguna Pueblo; she's from San Felipe Pueblo, but she was best friends with one of my relatives there. They were both teachers at the San Felipe, where my wife's from, San Felipe Pueblo Day School. And so my wife would be at Laguna because she didn't have a grandmother, but her friend, she was my kind of a cousin, a distant extended family cousin. Um, Her grandmother belonged to the same society that my grandmother belonged to, Louise Riley Orsayo. And so that's why they were close. They were sisters in that group. It's like a clan or fraternity it's a religious medicinal society that doesn't exist anymore. But they were the last of that generation. Um, you know, but but there was a lot of positive to growing up in my world, and I had two grandparents to reflect that onto me, because they looked at the future as nothing but positive. They weren't pessimists about their experiences, and I take that as a blessing and an honor. They always told me to look forward and never look back. And I was talking about that one day, I think, with one of my patrons, and my both grandfathers used to tell me, like, when we wear ceremonial garments in the getting ready for ceremonies, he said the way you first tie your belt, the way you lay your kilt, your ceremonial kilt, when you wear it, you always put it forward, the wrapping of it, so the first loop you do, your belt is always forward. And there's a lot of significant little metaphors for looking at life in a progressive forward way. And so that's what they always would emphasize. It's really amazing. They're two different speaking cultures, but their basis is the same. They're Puebloan people. One speaks the Harrison language, my Sayo family on my mom's side, and the Hopis on my Maktima side. It's a total different language. But basically all the metaphors are the same. There is stories about our connection back in the third world, was at Mesa Verde area, and that's where our people were again as a recognized they were symbiotic there. They were closely related, and it was the result of that migration into the fourth world, which is, we're leaving that now in our prophecies. We're now moving into the fifth era, or the fifth book, I guess, so to speak. They have recognized these periods just like in biblical time. At Laguna Pueblo, they still, around Easter time, they have a 4-day recitement of the four worlds that they've been through. And but we are moving into the fifth world now, because all the prophecies that the elders, which had been passed on, had said that there would be the ending of the fourth world, and the fifth world would be, they didn't know, they really didn't know what that was going to entail. But they knew that their sacrifices all through these other times if done properly, then our generation, I'm in my mid 60s now, and we're still carrying on these elements of ceremony and respect of who we are as a culture, which is pretty phenomenal for our time. Of course, there are a lot of how would you say hoops we still have to jump through in how we educate our children, and because as we all know, today is a very how would you say, it's a very um, for to live a life in this world today, it's a lot of responsibility financially and other means. So I have grandchildren now, and so sometimes culture has to be how would you say, balanced in however it's appropriate, because I feel very fortunate that my kids love school, my grandkids love school. I have two children myself, a son and a daughter. The son is the older. My son's in his early 40s now, and my daughter's 36. She was just married here last month, and but doing what I've done, you can, for the audience, you can read this, basically a synopsis of a profile of what I've developed. Of course, there's a lot more to that if I was to talk and go on about. But this program is an hour, and hopefully we'll use up the hour with and I know the exhibit is going to be speaking about the retrospective of my career. I grew up crafting. That's one accolade that I can say is through my grandparents, both very coming from a time of very resourceful people. They never nothing was material, like they didn't have the kind of income to go and buy extravagance. So a lot of times they made things with what they had, and I learned that watching my grandfathers. I mean, one of the as a young kid, discipline is very important. Which to do what I do today, it came from my experiences growing up. Hauling water. I mean, these are basic elements: hauling water, chopping wood, and sharpening an axe, and learning how to use a file. Well, little did I know, but later on I'd be doing a lot of filing, and that's what this work's all about. And with the stress of having a good education, a quality of life that my grandparents used to, believe it, amazingly enough, that my two grandfathers, the pictures you saw previously, they were both part of they both lived in Winslow, Arizona. They both had homes there, and they worked for the Santa Fe Railroad, and they belonged to the world famous Santa Fe Indian Band. And that band was a condoned diplomatic, how would you say, advertisement for the Santa Fe Railroad. And it was created during the time of the Southwest tours, which started in Chicago. I guess you could book a trip from the eastern part of the United States and come to the Southwest, and you rode the Southwest Chief. And so when you got to Albuquerque, they had the old Harvey houses, which were Puebloan concept, or what they call Southwest architecture, and beautiful time to showcase the heritage of the Southwestern people. And when you got to Winslow, you got greeted by the Santa Fe Indian Band in the evening. The train would usually pull in around 4 or 5 o'clock, and the men who worked for the Santa Fe Railroad from the Indian colonies there would get off work, and those who belonged to the Santa Fe Indian Band would run down to the train depot, and that was their practicing once or twice a week. They would go down, and then they performed in all the presidential inaugural parades from 1930 to 1962, because the Santa Fe Railroad runs all the way to Washington, D.C. They played in all the world's fairs up until I don't know when the last one date-wise was in the 60s, I guess. And then they played in the Rose Bowl parades from the very inception of the Rose Bowl parades. So, and then they played for all the dignitaries who came through Winslow, because Winslow Airport was a designated fuel stop for, it was just part of the FAA fueling transport route. So Winslow always had dignitaries stopping and who were flying in the early days. So the Santa Fe Railroad Indian Band would go out there and play for, you know, politicians or famous people, and that was, and then of course standing on the corner of Winslow, Arizona, you know, Highway 66, a lot of history there. Winslow was an amazing place, like every old town in America. It was one of those towns. The Highway 66 ran right through Winslow. Inevitably, in 1968, the freeway system, the interstate transportation system, kicked in and bypassed all these little towns: Winslow, Holbrook, Flagstaff, and Winslow and Holbrook became ghost towns almost. And even though there was still Santa Fe Railroad employment, but it was amazing how that took away a lot of the commercial part of those little towns. And Gallup, New Mexico, they all had to figure new ways to survive, and some had early on remedies to do that, but some towns took over 40 years to get to where they're thriving now, and that was Winslow and Holbrook are one of them. These are what's showing on the screen are basically pieces that I've done in the last 10 years, I guess, or but amazing commissions that I feel honored to do for people who just have ideas or see me as being the one to create masterworks for them, because that's the type of how would you say, enjoyment they have in what they feel they you know, can honor. As I just feel blessed to be able to do this type of work for people. This particular piece showing now is a bracelet that I did for a gentleman who honored and memorialized his parents. They were both deceased. He's my age, around mid-60s. I don't know if you can see, you can't, I don't have an image of the inside of this piece, I don't think, but there's a little black dot on the backside underneath the bracelet, but underneath there is the first 4 bars. This gentleman who owns this bracelet, who commissioned me to do this, wanted to honor his parents, and this bracelet is this memorializing. And underneath is his dad was a composer of music, and he proposed to his wife, my friend, this gentleman's mother, and he wrote a song, a proposal song. And so underneath, inside the bracelet, the first 4 bars are the notes to the song. And he was blown away when I thought of this idea to put in there, because he was telling me about his dad and what he represented to him and how much his parents meant to him. And I asked him, what did your dad do? And he said, my dad was a composer, and you know, he wrote music and sheet music for advertising or whatever, you know, jingles and stuff. And so he asked, I said, well, what about this? Why don't, he said, yeah, my dad even wrote my mother a proposal song. And I said, well, do you have that music? Do you have that sheet music? Because I played music growing up. And so I said, well, email me a copy of that song. And so I took the first 4 bars and put it inside the bracelet underneath. And he was so amazed that came out. And actually, we showed that to musicians, and they actually could hum it out by looking at the notes. So it's pretty impressive. I mean, to be able to, how would you say, you know, pass that along, that, you know, in the creative way, in my creative way of doing things. This is basically the type of work I started out doing in my early career. These inevitably are still pieces that work. that's the sign of good art, and is they never die out. They you know, it's the style that I've developed. It never seems to go away, and people still love it. Even the older things, the motif like the bear buckle on the back and the lizard design on the bottom. Those are all my own unique. I was the first Hopi heritage artist to do the positive overlay. Um, that's what you see there. The way Hopis had traditionally learned how to do silverwork overlay was to do the positive that you see the cutouts there. That would be a negative. And so I wanted to do something different. It's a lot more work and let's let them more skill. But now a lot of craftspeople are doing that type of overlay now. Basically the sun bolo in the middle is that's what I'm talking about. It's the negative, and then but you can reverse it, and that's what I did. Some pieces lend itself to blending of that technique better than others. So it just, if you know the skill of or the metals and design wise, it's kind of my call. So I know when it's appropriate to use it. And then I go on to that bottom piece, that pendant there is three-dimensional. And I was very fortunate. After I moved to Laguna Pueblo, I met my wife, Jan, and I knew it was going to be a serious new venture in my life. And I figured I better go back to Arizona and go back to college. I was also given a lot of reinforcement from my elders at Laguna Pueblo. I got to meet a lot of my grandfather's generation, and they were the ones that had kind of, in a way, apologized to me that, you know, that I came home to see and experience a traditional way of life that they had saw, but it was dwindling. It was dwindling away because the Pueblo of Laguna had the world's largest uranium pit mine, and it was discovered and opened up in 1948, and it closed around 1978. No, 1982 is when it closed. So the culture basically revolved around the mines, and it was not a good thing. And and uranium, even beyond that, a lot of radioactivity. It was all. But I was very fortunate. I held out. I didn't sell out. And a lot of my friends, when I had moved home in the 70s, relatives and friends that I made at Laguna Pueblo were all protesting it. And then one by one, they all gave in because the money was so good working there. You could start off making $20 an hour, and you're like in your 20s, driving a big truck. And I held out, and I wasn't making good living being an artist living there in the Pueblo. It's hard to live like that in the Pueblo because you're always being called to, participate in things and talk about belonging to a nonprofit organization. The native villages of the Pueblos of the Southwest, for what they do and what they give, it's amazing. You talk about giving and helping community. That's what the Pueblos of New Mexico and Arizona, the Hopi people, are about. It's totally about community and helping each other. This is the type of commissions that I love to get. I don't have a picture of how this design came about, but this was a commission from another patron who has several of my major pieces. This is a belt buckle. It's a big buckle. It's probably 3.5 inches wide. Height wise, like 4 inches wide. And he'd already owned several nice pieces that I've done for him and his wife. And one day he gave me an email last year when I was at the Amerind. Just when I got there, I got an email from him, and he lives in New Mexico. And he says, "Duane, I want you to do a buckle for him, but I can't figure out what it is I want." And he says, "So I'm just giving you a heads up that I might be calling you or emailing you back here in a few days or a couple of weeks, and I should have an idea, but I want to get another piece from you." And so he sent me a picture. He said, "Voila, I have figured out what I want." He goes, "It was sitting right here in front of my face all this time." And he goes, he sent me a picture of a mural that he had an artist do in his house, in his living room. And this is the mural. And it's the turtle, it's the water clan people. And it's a turtle. Of course, I had to modify the design and make it, render it to where it'd be metal friendly, and so, but the background is pretty amazing. He likes the idea of my texturing, and so I thought I would make it look like petroglyphs and put those little stamp designs in the background, and honor its water symbols, and those arrows are lightning symbols to our people, and rain and sun, and the elements of nature. Anyway, the stones as well honor the the water, because stones cannot be made unless there's water, and water is a very important element of development of stone materials and colors in nature. So that's why stone and turquoise actually is a offering for rain. For it's called the sky blue stone, and it's actually used. We use it a lot in ceremonial purposes, and I think that's what the significance of turquoise is to modern collecting, is the fact that native people have been using it and put it into jewelry way back. It's a copper-based mineral, which is what it's actually an oxidizing agent of whatever other materials in the composition. And actually, turquoise is a glorified chalk, because the mineral name is a phosphate. That's what the composition geological terms of turquoise material, and what makes it the blue color is the mineral copper. And so it's the copper being oxidized into the chalky material, which could be calcite, or it could be dissolving quartz. That's what that brown matrix is. It's oxidized quartz. That's what they call it matrix. The black and browns. It actually adds character to the pieces, and the better quality stones in turquoise are based on the hardness of that matrix. And believe it or not, to me, as a Native American, as a Pueblo Indian, I don't really look at turquoise like the way collectors do, being that they like to put a lot of hype on the value of turquoise being from certain mines or certain time periods in mining turquoise history. And to me, they're all the Mother Earth's children. I mean, that's the way I was always taught. So I don't put any glorified, how would you say, monetary value on turquoise, because to me, it's still a sacred stone. We still use it and honor it today. I don't know if I shared this the last webinar, but I always share this with my audience, is that these stones, when I was introduced in my early years of developing my career as a jeweler, I still had my grandfathers, and they used to constantly remind me of what I was doing was a blessing. It's a calling from a higher spirit, and so to honor the stones was very important, because they come out of the earth, and it's something not to take for granted, they would tell me. So this is a pair of earrings that the symbol of the Amerind Museum. This was a commission by the board, the Amerind, before I was on the board, to honor the outgoing director, Christine Schutzer, and then Eric Caldwell, who's just our host today, took her place, and they gave her a gift of this nature. So this is another great commission. I got to say a shout out to a couple of great patrons who I know you're out there today. You text me, Joan Conrad, this is her piece, and Laura Osinoff from New York City. Hello, and glad to have you here this morning with me. This is commissioned by I meet so many wonderful people, but Joan, this is one of Joan Conrad's pieces. This piece was sitting on my workbench for over 10 years, And I didn't really show the side view of it, but there's a lot going on with this piece. It's a box. It's like a three-dimensional box, and there's a cavity where the stones fit into the box, into the shape. And a lot of finesse goes on with inlaying. And my experience of, I've actually been in lapidarius for 47 years. And actually, I got my introduction to lapidary work when I was 14 years of age. I worked for the man who owned the concession uh, at the Petrified Forest National Park. He ran the gift shop, and it was a private contracting endeavor for him. Robbie Robertson was his name. So he cut and polished petrified wood, and I worked in his lapidary shop in Holbrook, Arizona. And he just, I loved that job. It was a dirty job, but you know, you got to start from the ground up. And I used to be the grunt who cleaned the machines. It's oil, just dirty oil that they use as a cutting agent, and they use these huge, big diamond blade saws to cut the stones, the petrified wood. And they made coffee tables, they made bench bookends, which are pretty phenomenal. But this piece is shows my lapidary experience, and it's a water serpent honoring the water people, and then with black jade, zebra jasper, opal, and pristine. And I do try to use. Well, I'm not biased about what stones I use. As a Native American jeweler, you would think that my primary thing would be turquoise, but being trained at graduate of Northern Arizona University in Fine Art, I had to take a lot of other art courses, which was I loved. I love painting, I love drawing, I love doing sculpture, but jewelry was my passion, and it was a good passion to find because jewelry is an easy media to haul around. You know, I can fly all over the country if I have an art show to do, and I would ship my booth material there to wherever I'm going, to Philadelphia or Los Angeles or San Francisco or Washington, and then I would just carry all my artwork on an airline, you know, on a carry-on. So, you know, a lot of steps soldering this piece, probably 20 steps to solder everything together on this piece. But yeah, this piece was on my bench for I think over 10, 12 years, and this patron Joan came to visit me at the Amerind last winter, and I showed it to her, and she goes, "Oh my goodness, Duane, this is what I'm talking about." And so we just had to finalize the design, and I had a different design in place until I did that other one with the turtle and the Vanyu, the water serpent. And she loves that symbol. She had told me to mention that. So I incorporated that into this piece, and oh, it just lent itself to being a completed piece then. So there's the water serpent there. Yeah, but it's been quite a unique experience. In 2004, I was one of the selected artisans for the grand opening. They showcased the grand opening of the National Museum of American Indian in Washington, D.C. And wow, I have three big accolades that I look at in my career of course, there are a lot of other accolades that I've had. One was a gallery that I landed in New York City, went to New York City for 8 years in a row, did a one-man show at a gallery on Park Avenue and 42nd Street. It was always a Christmas show, and the advertising they did at that show was incredible. But probably the biggest accolade I feel in my own heart for my family was achieving the National Museum of American Indian grand opening. Was one of the premier artists that was showcased in the Chesapeake Gallery. The museum purchased outright from me 95 pieces. It's the biggest sale I've ever had in my career. Probably will never ever see that. I knew that, and it took me. They gave me this great request to make all these pieces. It was a for sale gallery that was in the reception area of the bottom floor of the National Museum of American Indian Museum in Washington, D.C. And I went to the grand opening. I was featured outside as well in an Indian art open air market for artists, and it was a 6-day event, and it was just awesome to have that accolade. And then also my other two great accolades that I've had in my career are 2 distinguished alumni awards from Northern Arizona University, one from 1990, the Jubilee 100-year celebration award for the university, the age of the university, and then I received another one, and 9 years later, the 1999 was, the big hype for the year 2000, the celebration of the millennia, and I was given an award for at NAU from the College of Creative Arts. I was, I think, 3 of students that they selected from the years of the College of Creative Arts, its existence at Northern Arizona University. Unfortunately, that university, like everywhere else, they're scaling back on a lot of the art programs, and but I will always plug. I've been a teacher. Of course, being a success, I had to share what I know, and I did that for over 15 years, sharing, teaching. I taught at the Institute of American Indian Art, and I helped Pueblos and other tribes do vocational training. I think that wraps me up for this program.
Yeah. And we have a few questions, Duane, if you'd give us a couple minutes.
Sure.
Sure. One question is, what do you think about the contemporary art scene, and how do you advise young artists today?
Well, God, we're in a critical time right now in today's world. A lot of Native American kids, like myself, grew up very resourceful and have a lot of talent because of that family. How would you say, the recognized family values, which if you are from a tribal community anywhere, and I'm talking about the world, you usually have like very resourceful people, what I was describing earlier. But contemporary is the next step you go into if you're thinking about art as a profession. So, but it's you've heard that word, starving artist. Well, I always told my students, don't ever quit your day job. Are you sure you want to do this? Because it ain't easy. It's not fun. There was many years growing up in this business where I didn't know what there was some bad years. I've been through so many recessions, and art is one of those things that abounds when things are great, and it sucks when it doesn't. When there's I mean, literally, I've had to do repair work to survive. A year when I was younger, or do things that you don't want to do, which is little tiny like $10-$20 items. But fortunately, if you stick with it and you have that discipline and you can deal with it, that's the difference of and you have to stress contemporary, because that's where innovation comes in. You have to be innovative. You have to be how would you say? You have to be persistent in being unique. That's very important today.
And Duane, there's actually a question that sort of speaks to that. Alva wanted to know, are you still learning new things?
Oh, you're always learning. And where I'm learning today is, oh my God, it's funny, but I've been going back to old designs. I have probably 5 or more sketchbooks of my history of doing this work. And that's a discipline that I took it upon myself in the beginning to sketch. And then when I got into my formal jewelry arts program at NAU, it was really stressed. You couldn't do a critique unless you had your drawings submitted with your pieces, your finished items. So I think that whole evolution, that's what it involves. It's just it's a continuing, ongoing innovation, and that's what being an artist is really about, is discovering and throwing that out there where people at the norm think this is what you normally do. and then all of a sudden, boom, you do this something that like that's not Duane, but it has my name on it. It has my hallmark on it.
And that's a good question. Henry and Mary wanted to know if you do sign your work, and what does that look like?
Oh, yeah. Well, we don't have on on the video, on the media stuff we have in this video. We don't have the hallmark, but if you go to my website or look me up, Google me. You can Google my name, Duane Maktima, and you will see all the photos. There's a lot of Hallmark photos too of my work. You can actually look it up. I think Hallmark for Duane Maktima, and if you Google that, you will see it. But how I date my work is by the different hallmarks I've had. I've had 3 hallmarks in my career. They've changed since 1974, and that dates my work because my work. I always knew this would happen. I was by my professor was told I better hallmark my work, and that would help me date my work because I guess he had a positive feeling about my career early on, that he would always tell me that just keep plugging away, you'll get there. And my work shows up now in the second generation market, and it's just an honor to be still doing this. And I'm doing, I'm, like I said, I'm in my mid 60s. My grandfathers were very active and creative up until in their mid 90s. They were craftsmen, artisans too. So I look forward to that. I'm slowing down a lot, but I think the slowing down part is that I'm so meticulous. The work's got to be. It's not perfect. I will tell you this. You can take a microscope to it or a magnifying glass, and you'll see imperfections. But that's handmade. It's an illusion, optical illusion. That you're. Nobody's perfect. The only perfect perfection is out there is God. That's the way I look at it. And to me, it discloses handmade. And one thing I have to be aware of today, contemporary is also computer technology today. And I'm trying to keep stressing to my younger native people to learn how to do handwork because, well, of course, that's the technology of today. They can even design jewelry with a computer, like a 3D printer and all this other stuff. They even have a lapidary laser inlay system now developed for inlaying stones. But no, I still do it the old school way, and which means a lot more to a lot of people. These are the kind of pieces that will go down in history, being that it went through my hands, and I just really love what I do, and I teach it to my kids. My children learned it. It's not what they fall back. I mean, it's something for them to fall back on, but it's not their professions. But I stressed this growing up, just like the way it was stressed to me by my elders, telling me that you need to learn how to use your hands. And because this is a lot of this stuff, like carving, what the cultural arts that we do. I make moccasins as well. I make bows and arrows and rattles and all that stuff. If I really needed to, I can make those, and I can make it's a living. It's a supplemental income that I can make if I had to. But no, luckily, fortunately, the jewelry trade has been really, really good to me, even in these times of crisis like this pandemic. This summer was the most incredible summer I've ever had in my history of my career. I don't know what it was, but a lot of my patrons just came forth to me and said, Duane, I want you to do this for me. I was like, wow, this is pretty incredible. I really thank all of my patrons for this honor of serving, that, how would you say, that purpose of doing something really unique for them. And the Amerind, of course, has a lot to do with it because, I was showcased there for the last 3 years. And as an artist in residence, I met a lot of people through this program. And I want to share this with your public. The Amerind is a museum of integrity. That's the way I look at it because of its not only its natural setting, but the community there and the collections, just very different than a lot of museums that I've been affiliated with. And it's if you ever, folks in the audience, if you ever get a chance to put that on your bucket list to get to the Amerind, because it's just an awesome place.
Well, I'm afraid we are out of time, and I couldn't get to everybody's questions, but I'll share them with Duane after this talk to see if we can get you some emails in answering those questions. And I just want to thank Duane and all of you for joining us today. Duane, that was just a wonderful presentation. We learned so much more.
I'm going to sing my way out. So
you're going to sing
thank you everybody for joining me. Way ahead now. Way ahead, hey, oh. Way ahead, hey, oh. Way ahead, hey, oh. Way yo, yo, way oh, hey, yo, hey, yo. Way ahead, hey, way oh, hey, oh. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for being with us.